This is Psych 466, The Psychology of Sex. This is your professor, Taylor Oliver. Today we're going to be talking about Chapter 7, which is entitled Gender. So this is where we're going to talk about the differences between men and women and what's biologically seeded versus socially constructed, and many times you'll see it's probably a mixture of both. So what is gender exactly? Well, gender is an entire collection of mental and behavioral traits that differ between sexes. So specifically we're talking about the differences between males and females, since, as you know, a vast majority of us belong to one of those two groups. Now, this is a bit different than gender identity. Gender identity is the sense to which you believe that you belong to a sex. So how much you feel like a man or how much you feel like a woman. Now, for most of us, we feel very aligned with our biological sex. So most females feel like women and most males feel like men, right? So your sex and your gender are very closely aligned, and therefore your gender identity is consistent with your biological sex. When does this not happen? Well, this doesn't happen for people who are transgendered or transsexual individuals. These are people who are born into one sex, yet identify with the other. So these are males who identify as being a woman, or females who identify as being a man. So for those individuals, their gender identity is different than their sex. Okay. Something that is related, although not the same, is gender roles. And gender roles are the expression of your gender identity. So how much that you feel to express how masculine or feminine you are, how male or female you are. So this can be clothes that an individual wears, how they walk, how they talk. These are all things that are considered gender roles. So I'm going to give you an example. I had a friend who went to Santa Cruz, the university, and for those of you who don't know much about Santa Cruz, it's this really liberal hippie town, and they do what we call a lot of gender bending. So they like to, males like to maybe dress as females even though their gender identity might still feel relatively manly or masculine, or vice versa. So there was this one professor who used to teach a gender theory class, and he used to come in every day and he wore a dress and earrings and put makeup on. So if you saw him, you would think that he identified as being a woman. However, he would state that his gender identity was still male. However, his gender role, his expression of that gender identity was not very consistent with his actual feelings of gender identity. And he did this to prove a point, to show that one's gender identity is not connected to their gender roles. In general, of course, that's not how it works, but people have great variation between the way that they want to express their gender role. So again, someone who, say, is a tomboy is someone who might still have a gender identity of being a woman and have no question about it, very consistent with their sex, let's say, but they feel like they would rather dress in more masculine clothing. That would be an expression. Your gender role would then look more masculine.